you help guide them in making the right decisions to continue to protect and serve all of us. Be with us in this meeting and in our committee of the whole meeting as we do this work. And dear Lord, above all, we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you all for being here. The first item on this special call agenda is consideration of resolution authorizing the competitive bid and subsequent construction of an emergency service building on existing county property here at McDaniel Avenue to house County Unified Dispatch, Emergency Medical Service Headquarters, and Emergency Management Logistics Operations, along with source of funds and matters related thereto. So this evening, just due to the spirit of it all, trying to keep up with the growth, the taxation it has on our emergency services as a whole. It is Telecommunicators Week, which is kind of phenomenal that it kind of, the timing of it all coming together. But I've asked Mr. Roper to update us, and then we consider this resolution authorizing the moving forward with the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, you will recall, as you mentioned, that this is fortuitously, I think it's a good opportunity for us to remember our Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. I hope you all had an opportunity to see as you drove up the static display of all the emergency vehicles that are dispatched by our telecommunicators, by our dispatchers. Also, if you're on social media, please do notice the telecommunicator profiles that are being put up this week, which I think was a great idea, bringing focus on those folks. The first responder that you get in emergency is the person who picks up that 911 call. And so that is your first responder. And I appreciate all the different agencies that are represented outside with their different representative vehicles to show that appreciation to our telecommunicators. So we're very proud of that. Not, not intentionally, but I would say fortuitously, we're also talking about one of the 3 council goals for the year. If you'll recall, back when y'all set goals for this term, this 2-year term, you had set one of your things as you wanted to act with a purpose to nurture a resilient community. Through unified dispatch and radio system upgrades, improve the provision of emergency services. So as you've been working towards that goal, you didn't just set it as a goal and then look to staff to fix all the problems. No, you actually allocated money to do a feasibility study about a communications building, a logistics facility to be located, if feasible, directly behind this building. I can tell you that we started that process through a competitive procurement process that gave us McMillan, Patterson, and Smith architects, who were able to do. You're laughing, Mr. Vice Chairman, because you see the circles.
That's right, because you're a circle guy.
You know how that appeals to me. That being said, McMillan, Patterson, and Smith then began work. We received input from your Emergency Services Board. We received input from various departments with staff. People started in this room at the dream scenario. What would it look like if we had the dream scenario? And we began looking at it then through a lens of what are the real needs, and we were able to eliminate some of those dreams that would be wonderful things, but we wanted to get back to what were our core needs. Really, at the end of that process, you'll see that there's color codes for many different things, but at the end of the day, we really have 3 color codes. The blue area being communications, dispatch, training facilities for them, office spaces for them, dispatch facility in keeping with our workload now and offering us an opportunity to have growth in the future, so space for growth. Also, you'll see in green, this would also include new office and training facility for our EMS. This would be a new EMS headquarters. That's a huge need. If you've been out to our facility on Walhalla Highway, which is literally an old car dealership, that's where EMS headquarters is now. It is our old emergency operations center. So EMS is in hand-me-down location. This would put them in a new state-of-the-art facility up here on the hill. So that's the other need. The other big need that we identified through that process was emergency management storage capability. This is not the highest ticket item that you're about to see on this list, but this is instead a very efficient use of the space. We have emergency management equipment, things like our mobile command unit, our mass fatality trailer, our boats, our other equipment that we have for emergencies, generators, light towers, those sorts of things. We have them stored in every nook and cranny in this county. Every fire station's got a trip hazard in it right now because we've got one of those pieces of equipment out there. And so we thought it was important for us to find a centralized location so that we could start storing our equipment here, be able to stage it here, do logistics work in advance of a big event that we might see, and to give us some flexible space. So those three big areas are what ended up surviving that process, that culling process with McMillan, Pasden, and Smith. The slightly, I guess that's a peach color, that's E911 equipment, like a server room, those sorts of things. We then were able to, through the work of the architects, narrow that down into no longer circles. Unfortunately, we're now with rectangles. But the rectangles start leading us towards a footprint. And we were able to look at our existing footprints and start developing a new footprint. And then looking, and you have to kind of skew your head, we're trying to make this where it would look, to orient you. The feasibility study that we're doing, this is the building we're in now. Actually, if you walked out down this hall, you would walk out this door. It's almost directly back that way behind us. Looking at putting it back there, taking care of traffic flow for the proposed emergency management, storage, and logistics, traffic flow in and out. Also, additional parking for the folks that park back here now, which there are people that like to park on gravel because this is Pickens County, right? So that we got some folks that love to park in the back. And also for our new dispatch personnel that would be parking there as well. And so you have these two facilities, retaining wall, new detention pond, directly behind where we are now. I will tell you that part of my conversation with the architects was that this building, the building we're in now, was built in the early 90s. And it's still doing really good service. I think if we started looking at planning on building these things somewhere else, we're hastening the end of our current building. Instead, let's focus on what works. We still have good use, good generational, I hope, use of this building. I love this building and the suitability it is for our various needs. So if we double down on that and build something consistent with it behind, are we not extending our investment and maximizing our investment? And so I challenged them to figure out something that would be consistent, it would be harmonious, and we would be able to justify that additional investment in this property that the county already owns. This is as far as we are on architectural. You're not going to see any design drawings because those are going to be budget driven, I think, in a lot of ways. But we do have rough floor plans. And you have this in front of you if you can't see. Basically, if you come out on the first floor, ground level, you remember the pull-through areas. This would be storage for our emergency management equipment. This would be logistics, allowing us to do setup and breakdown for emergencies right here. Pull-through bays all the way. This first floor would be the new EMS headquarters, training room, and break areas, storage as well for EMS. The server rooms for the hardened server rooms for the dispatch facility. And then upstairs, there would be the dispatch. You see the dispatch facilities here, which gives you additional growth areas out here. Also the file rooms, the bathrooms, the support rooms, the office space for those folks. So we feel pretty good about this being something that would give us good utility here along with our current building and its continued utility. But what we know is that we need to look at what would that potentially cost. One of the things we tasked the architects with is giving us an estimate of what they think such a facility would cost. And they've given us what they can give us, which is based on price per square foot of these different uses. For example, the logistics area with the emergency management equipment is relatively low in cost per square foot because it's mainly air. On the other hand, the dispatch facility is highly technical, so it has to have fiber optic cabling and all those sorts of things throughout. So they've used those square footage numbers, the needs they thought we had, and they've come up with an estimated range. Building, site work, all of those things, they see in a range between $13 and $18 million. Now, I can tell you for comparison, and we were talking about this just before, when we built the jail, that was a $24 million project, and that completed in 2020, maybe 2019, before costs really jumped. So I was not really surprised by this number. I do know that the assets you all have at your disposal are still have a little over $8 million in ARPA funds available. This would be a perfectly qualifying ARPA expenditure. And then there was some talk at last week's budget meeting about fund balance. I talked to the finance director about the potential of this price range between 13 and 18 and what his recommendations would be. Obviously, we have good, healthy bond capacity in this county, and we have a very good credit rating. So we could issue bonds, and it would allow us to spread that cost over many years. But we also, as you mentioned in the meeting, have a healthy fund balance. We've got money in our savings account that we could supplement and meet this. So tonight for discussion, what the ask is from staff is that we move forward, that we put this out to bid. We see where we come in that estimate, and we look to construct this much needed facility. I'll be glad to answer to the extent I can any questions. I will tell you that Billy Gibson also is here if there are questions more specific to the operational side. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions specific for Mr. Roper or Mr. Gibson? Yes, sir. Councilman.
Thank you. I have two questions. First, can I presume that this building is hardened, for lack of a better term, kind of more than a standard building? If we're putting all of our emergency operations in one place, it needs to be able to withstand a lot. So I guess, will the building withstand all of that, and or do we have redundancy somewhere else in the county before we put all this in one place?
Councilor, both very good questions. I can tell you that, yes, it does have to be hardened. One of the features that we did talk about is you'll notice the server room. This isn't the only thing that's hardened about it, but just so a feature to point out why that's important. The architects, even in this conceptual layout, they're saying that needs to be center of the building. That needs to be surrounded by other uses. You know, it doesn't need to be exposed. The dispatch center itself will have to be hardened. It will have to be, you know, you've got people working in there 24/7. Right. So they're going to have a consistent environment to work in. So yes, that's very true. It is not like building another type of county building. It's not like building a fire station, equally important, but different needs. But the other part of that is that there is a redundancy. So if we locate dispatch at this location exclusively, we will be removing them from the sheriff's office, where we have half of our dispatchers now, a little less than half, are currently dispatching downstairs in the basement. Right. In repurposed location.
People in Liberty are done.
Yeah, we're doing that for Liberty, Pickens, and Central now currently downstairs. But the backup for that is something that we have some options. We don't think we would want to keep, and this is a step further, but just so you know how we're thinking, that we would want to keep the sheriff's office facility as the backup because we're on the same communication circuit here.
Yeah.
Instead, there are two other facilities, one in Easley, one in Clemson, that could serve as the backup, and we could serve as the backup for them. So we would look at working out an agreement in that regard.
Okay, and that sort of fuels my second question, which was, when you look at other counties around the state or in our neighboring states, is it a best practice to have a singular communication and EMS response? Is this putting us more in line with how most people operate this, or is this a step forward? Like, where would you say, maybe that's a question for Gibson.
And it might be, I'll speak up, and he's back here, he can correct me if I'm wrong. He doesn't say, he always says in this circumstance that I'm not. But he can correct me if I misspeak. The trend that I have seen is towards unifying and making things where people can be co-located. Okay. One of the huge benefits to that is if someone calls in with an EMS complaint, an EMS call, and someone else is calling in with a sheriff's department complaint or a fire complaint, if we were able to individually train the dispatchers to be able to handle those, to become more expert at that type of call, that would be a huge benefit. But if they can't communicate with each other, what if it's a joint emergency?
Yeah.
So co-locating them gives you a great synergy. What, Director Gibson, would you say that
That's very well said, and since we do have more than one 911 center in the county, we just have this conversation out in the hallway. If a call comes in from the city of Easley, that is easily police department's primary response area, it's easily fire department's response area, but it's Pickens County EMS.
Right.
So if EMS pulls up and they can't find the accident, they have to call the Pickens dispatcher, who has to pick up the phone and call Easley and get further information, and then it has to go to circuit until it gets back. So if we're all in the same room, it's a matter of saying, hey, can you give me more information on this call? Oh yeah, they moved the cars into the parking lot, they're not on the roadway anymore. Just that nuts and bolts communication, face-to-face communication, makes it more efficient and more quick to get out of the field.
Great, thank you.
Councilman Wallace.
These price estimate guesses here, is that including, are we gonna be using our same communications equipment, or is this gonna have to buy all new stuff?
not all new stuff? There's I guess there's three different components to that answer.
Mm-hmm.
One is a large part of the equipment expense is already covered through the radio program. So the dispatch terminals are part of the radio system. Y'all have already funded that. So that part's going to be lessened by that.
It would be moved to the new building?
Well, yes, absolutely. The other thing would be the existing equipment that we have, it's not going to be obsoleted just because we built a new building. So we'll look at that as we move forward of what parts of that can move into the new facility. And then add to that if we do have to purchase new equipment, much of the equipment in a communications facility like this is reimbursable from the state 911 fund at I think an 80% level. So we'll keep coming back to you with updates on that. There's multiple avenues that we would follow just before we said all new stuff.
How much will we be able to utilize any of our county grading and all that, or is it going to be a turnkey company comes in and does the grading, site prep, all that?
This assumes a turnkey, but we would look at that. If we really got down to a cost issue where we thought we couldn't afford something that's desperately needed, but maybe we could repurpose some county folks to do some work, we would. But that's a question that I think we'll have to answer when we know more specifics on the budget numbers.
Wasn't the first guess like $5 million?
For the facility, yes, but I'll tell you that there were points when the facility, I think the first guess was 8, but there were points when the facility in the process as we began to narrow it down to what we felt like we really needed, where we were talking about 30 million. So we continue to hone and refine down from that before bringing it to you all.
How have the conversations gone with the sheriff's office?
They've been good. We haven't, how shall I say this? In the environment we're in, where we have an incumbent sheriff who's going out, and we have 4 or 5 candidates running for that office. 5 running for that office. I have not pushed that issue with them because I think it's a common sense issue and not necessarily a political issue. Prior to the campaigns getting underway, we had good fruitful discussions about the synergies like we were discussing, where it would benefit both law enforcement and fire rescue EMS. So I don't really anticipate that being a big hurdle. I think the logic and the fact that this is going to be a new state-of-the-art facility will make the case for us.
What do you think your biggest hurdles are?
Biggest hurdles in terms of getting that conversation going?
No, the project.
Oh, the project itself. Anytime you're talking about a project of this cost, you're worried about committing the money. I mean, we are, because anytime we spend $1, that's an opportunity dollar that we don't get to spend on some other project. So we had to keep reminding ourselves, these are the priorities of council. These priorities need to be taken care of, knowing that these were your priorities. So communications, EMS, these types of emergent issues were important to us. That being said, we initially wanted to locate Medic 1 here. And quite frankly, that would have been a easy solution. It moves you a little bit out of the service area you would want, moves you a little south. But if you think about a location up on the hill, think about the roads you would need to get down that would be an emergency road. It was just prohibitively expensive. You'd have millions of dollars in roads that we didn't think would make sense. So the biggest hurdle that I see right now is once we get past this commitment, we need to start talking about what's our commitment for Medic 1 and what's our solution. So that's my biggest hurdle, is still worrying about that. As far as this goes, we know it's a need. We know we have the money. We will want to have professional services. I think this is something I talked to Mr. Seda about, is that the county is not in the business of building buildings. It's not what our expertise is. We can do some renovations. We can build some roads. But when it comes to building state-of-the-art facilities, we're going to need to rely on experts. So I'm going to make sure that we get the right people running the program.
It's important to me, something of this caliber, this size of the project, it's got to last. It's got to be something that's here. It's got to be something we can not only grow in physical space, but as technology changes and everything else, because you really kicked it off. We have the folks that are truly the very first responder you deal with in this building, and then you have the equipment that you need when your life gets flipped upside down and it's literally the worst day of your life, all in this location. And it's so important that we have this stuff, because at the basis of government and service, these are like the two, in my opinion, that are the strongest. And we got to make sure that we're planning for the future, just because we haven't necessarily in the past. We definitely have to moving forward with things like this, especially with the financial piece. Any other for Mr. Rucker questions?
I had one quick comment. So how quickly from, if we say yes now, till it happens? Because the jail took a longer, it wound up being 26 million, because it started at 24 where we wanted to start, and then prices started to increase. So how long before we're locked in on a rate and we know exactly what we're paying?
So I talked to the finance director about that last Thursday, and then again this morning. His recommendation, because we're dealing with ARPA funds, is the time is now. We need to.
Yeah, if we say yes, but how long before rates are locked in? In other words, how long will it take to get you got to get more information back to get the
Yeah, so we know this estimate now. When we put it out to bid, we're talking about 60 to 90 days till we have documents that are suitable for bidding, because this is just, the architects are not going to put this out to bid because they're telling what they tell us that would cost. It's going to have to get very specific. And then after that, I would say another 60 days for us to get the bid out and get it opened. So you're talking September, October would be hopefully when we could be doing a notice to proceed. And we'll need to move with that kind of speed because we need to have this ARPA money committed.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Chairman.
That's what I said.
You can go ahead.
Go ahead.
What's the square footage of the building?
Oh, let's see. There's actually should be some information in your file about that.
It's very tiny.
There you go. About 37,000 square feet.
One of the things I would recommend, and we talked about this when we came in, is the expertise. We have two excellent people who have actually done tons of work in construction. One did the school district building program, which is a $400 million program. I think it was something like 27 buildings they worked on. He's retired. He lives in Pickens. The other one is, and that's Bob Folkman.
Right.
The other one's Dwayne Green. He actually retired as well. So you might want to speak to either of those. I think they could probably add some of the expertise that we don't have, because we just generally not in the building business.
No, we aren't. And I appreciate that. I think it would be wise for us to reach out for some expertise, and that's certainly our intention. Thank you for that.
Dr. Wilson.
I was thinking about, the type of emergencies we had, the tornadoes in Martin Anderson County, the Pinnacle Mountain Fire, and all the different combined services. And we had a chance to go see the Charleston facility for this. The area they had where they had assigned seating, terminals or whatnot, and it was kind of clustered by the emergency. That way they had all the right people on the spot if they had a big issue. Is there spots for that in the facility?
At this point, that's not in the design, that's in the concept. So if you look at the floor plan, you won't see that. oh, I'm going the wrong way. They're just dealing with raw square footage needs. But that will be one of the linchpins of what we want, because that was, you came away from that tour of the Charleston facility with the exact same feeling I had, is that you can have all the technology in the world, but at the end of the day, there's the human element. I need you, you know, we need to talk about this face to face.
So some of you guys didn't tour, but they had a seat for the animal control guy. So you can imagine in a hurricane, you've got the guy that knows how to triage the issue for animals. Right beside him was like the tree people, and was over here was folks that, I mean, everybody's in the room. They all have their seat. They all have their own vest, you know, so it's easy to identify the folks. I mean, you know, that's emergency management in my mind, right?
Yeah, so our existing emergency management operations center downstairs will be a perfect complement to this. They'll be feet from each other.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's one of those.
If we move forward with this, what will we then do with the Hinkle property? What will be the changes out there?
Well, so there's still, and this is a larger conversation, but I think it's a good one. The Hinkle property is still the base of our vehicle maintenance facility, and it's also our building maintenance facility. But long range, I think it would be in the county's interest to not have all these multiple spread out operations. And I would like for us to start working towards combining operations on County Farm Road at the old stock egg facility. Again, those are priorities that will be in future years, not now. But I think it would be in our interest for efficiency and for value to the taxpayer to invest more in the County Farm Road facility, look at moving building maintenance out there probably first, and then ultimately try to move vehicle maintenance, oddly, back out there. That's where it was originally.
So there's no plan to expand them out there?
No, I don't think, I mean, certainly this is a larger vision kind of question that I think county council's vision is more important than what.
I know that's way down the road.
Right, but I think that is a good, fruitful conversation for us to have in terms of what your vision is. But my recommendation would be to consolidate operations where we can.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Council level.
No, I'm good.
Councilman said.
This building's probably about 35,000 square feet, isn't it?
It's bigger than that because we got 2 floors. To keep that in mind.
Maybe 40?
It's more than 40. I'll get that exact number.
Yeah, because 37 for that seems 37. It seems like a lot of space.
Well, a lot of it, if you'll notice, almost a third of it is bay storage space.
Okay, so a third of it, so maybe 12,000 square feet.
And you're putting some big, like a couple of those pieces of equipment are RV size. You're talking about the mobile command unit, it's literally an RV. So you've got to have some place to put that. I think we're storing that right now on, somebody flinched, was that a?
No, how many
F-150s can you put in there?
Yeah, I know.
I look at the 4 F-150s.
If I should have done that calculation. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed.
The standard unit of
That is-
measure now.
That's right.
That is a good
anything like
point.
meters?
Councilman said that is a good point, but there is a chunk of it that is open space.
Right.
Storage. And if we've learned in the past, and Chief Director can probably attest to, you leave equipment outside for any length of time, especially equipment you're not using every day, that's when you start having trouble with it.
So the top diagram on the right there, that's just an open space.
That's, it's nothing. That's,
But it's closed in open space?
well, I think that's the roof
So
line
how-
You
below.
can't have 2 stories on the basement.
Oh, I got it.
It's just one, it's not gonna be what we would call 1 story, because you've got really tall equipment going in and out of there.
Gotcha.
But there's nothing above it.
I got you. Yeah, I got you. There's a tall ceiling. Right.
That's right.
Think of a big open garage. That's right. Any other questions for Mr. Roper? Here none, I'll make a motion that we consider this resolution, authorizing the competitive bid and subsequent construction of this building.
A second.
Discussion on the motion.
How many bids do you typically get on this kind of project?
We don't typically bid this kind of project. I guess is the truest answer there. I'll tell you on our paving bids, our larger bids, we'll get 3 or 4. Last time we built fire stations, I think we had 4 bids. Does that sound right? About right. Yeah. So
Okay.
you're looking, that's usually what you'll have. We'll count on, in this case, the avenue I would follow is allowing the architect to draw up bid specs as we discussed.
Yeah.
And they'll help us publicize that as well. So I would hope that we'd be casting a broader net than just, listing it on our website. So hopefully that'll spur some interest.
And my follow-up, I know I sound like a broken record, but at an SCAC conference, they talked about the amount of funds you can unlock if you are different levels of green building. If you have green roofs, solar panels, a lot of that stuff unlocks more funding. So I know the first process is getting a bid, but I think there may also be other ways to unlock funding that are not just 100% our fund balance. And maybe ACOG would be a resource on this, maybe SCAC is a resource on this, but not only is it, I think, good practice that new county buildings should follow environmentally safe procedures, but it may also unlock some funding that we might not otherwise get if we keep an eye on that.
We'll try to explore specifics on that because it's not an area I have a lot of knowledge about, but I certainly will explore that and report back.
Thank you. I have a question.
Councilman Saban.
On this table you showed us, it said site 9 acres. We own that property, right?
Yeah, that's talking about site work.
Okay, site.
Yeah. I think that's what Mr. Wallace was referring to.
Yeah,
Dr. Wilson, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Before I was on, I thought that if you called 911, it was like space age from TV, CSI, right? Just experts with helmets on, basically 3D. It stunned me that we had some people sitting at like rickety tables, and bootstrap using their own cell phone to dispatch for 3 whole cities. And then, it's great what you guys have. It also stunned me that the sheriff's department was responsible for it. And I talked to fire folks, and they would talk about the difficulties sometimes with priorities because sheriff's got shy. But then we went down to Charleston and saw what is real, 911 dispatch at emergency management level, not just on the day-to-day kind of, criminality and fire and whatever. I think that most folks think it's like TV. I don't think anybody thinks if they called in Liberty that they were going to get people sitting at a fold-out desk, right? We do this in 2 years, 3 years. The radio system comes online. We have a facility in 2 to 3 years that consolidates it and then gives momentum to the idea that the stakeholders should buy into having it in one spot. So start to finish, from shock and awe to done something about it, maybe 6 years. Is that because we started talking? I think the first year I got on here, I was completely surprised by how inadequate we had. And then we're talking about ARPA money spent is going to be 18 of that. So we were on path to having to save up or get up $18 million on top of what we're already about to spend, if we were ever able to do it. Is that true?
Dr. Wilson, I think it is true, and I think it's a larger story than that perhaps we as staff need to be telling better. I don't think there is an appreciation, even when we talk to ourselves, about how far we've come in the last, I don't know, like you said, 8 to 10 years from where we were to where we are now. 13 fire districts with 13 different funding mechanisms. Funding mechanisms that were so archaic we could not afford to give our firemen a pay raise. To now,
but you didn't even include them in the study.
They didn't even, no, they had to exclude them from the study the last go round. This time we have a actual sustainable funding system for our fire, for our apparatus, and for our pay for our employees. So we're very excited to see the results of our compensation study, knowing that we've got a sustainable method to fund it. You talk about going from 13 fire districts with 13 different agendas to 1 fire district. And then you talk about getting on a sustainable program with our ambulance fleet. Just a few years ago, we weren't really replacing ambulances, didn't really have a plan. But over the last, as I would say, 6 to 8 years, we've been replacing. I've got a report coming to y'all in May from the EMS director about how close we are to having our fleet totally turn over in the next couple of years through the work we've done. So then you talk about radio systems. We've gone from a hodgepodge of radio systems in this county where you had different people on different channels, different technologies. And then you all led by providing funding through ARPA to put them on one channel where they can all communicate with each other so that EMS doesn't have to call back to dispatch if they need to talk to the sheriff's deputy who's a quarter-mile away. They can communicate directly. Those sorts of things are very important, and it's a huge step forward for this county. But it's what this county needs. We are not a small county anymore.
So what I'm trying to wrap my head around is we're a fast response organization right now. right? We have a lot of things, different places, and people are getting out there and getting in front of it, but we don't have a strategic level sort of coordination capacity.
Right.
That's where it feels like we're transitioning to. When we're talking about that in the past, in the job and professional environment, when you talk like that with folks about growth, the 1/3 of the conversation is always about pipeline. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm completely convinced we've done an incredible amount for emergency management, fire, and other folks. I mean, in the sheriff's department, particularly, we got our own garbage cops, right, when they went hire them. I don't know, whatever the word that's supposed to have been. The thing that stands out for me is the pipeline issue, right? We talk about, or some of us talk about building a new EMS facility somewhere but when we started talking with you guys about it, you said we don't have a pipeline for it. We can't fill jobs we got. Then we added some roving teams and whatnot in their own explorers, I guess, or whatnot. And it took you guys a while to kind of have to talk about a pipeline. For me, if I'm looking at the facility you have here, one of the little bitty tiny dots seems to say dispatch training. And so you're going to be able to train in-house and have those guys up to par, right there in the building. And then the rest of the thing is focused on pipeline. Because it looks to me like we're going to consolidate a bunch of folks. We're going to be responsible for training everybody on dispatch in the whole county. So that piece of it to me, don't build a building that's going to be empty, right? Build a building that you got plenty of people to fill. I mean, you can only ride one horse with one butt, right? So put the people where you got them, or when you have them, you put them in there. So this does that for us. This puts us in a place where we can train all of our own folks, where we can coordinate that, where we can consolidate that, and start being active on the pipeline. Is that?
No, I think it absolutely does. And you talk about pipeline. The pipeline doesn't work without the morale of the folks that are coming into that pipeline. Val Carino famously says that Pickens County government is really, we're really people. This is a lot of money to spend on a building, right? But we spend way more every year in our annual budget than anything else on personnel. And if we're putting those folks in a place that's state of the art, that they can be proud of, that they feel like they can be trained in, where they're not stuck in corners like they might be in other jurisdictions. You're talking about really giving the public servants something they need and something that'll be good for their professional growth, for their morale, for the feelings they have about where they work. I think it's invaluable, and I'm excited about that very pipeline idea you're talking about.
So more than a building?
More than a building. Much more.
Okay.
Vice Chairman Custer.
Dr. Wilson, I think the point that you're making is, and Mr. Roper too, it's very important to know how far we've come to get to where we are, because my first introduction to anybody in fire and EMS is the story that I told my first year on council 7 years ago when I got rear-ended, and I called and said, we're fine. We probably need to send somebody with the police department because the girl who rear-ended me, her airbag blew. But we're all okay. There was fire trucks, ambulances, EMS. There was at the sheriff's, everybody and their brother came on 123, locked down the road, and that's when I met Scott Smith. And I said, I don't understand. He said, well, we didn't know for sure, so we just sent everything we got. And that's where it started. And the consolidation of the fire districts into all these things that have happened up to this point have made it so much better. But this takes it to closer to what you see on TV, where people are communicating and able and fixing those response times. And you don't have to send everybody out unless you need to. And I think it's an important story that you guys got to tell.
I agree.
Councilman Wallace.
At what point will we have a working set of drawings?
Again, I would think that after we, assuming we cross tonight's hurdle, my next call and tomorrow morning would be to the architects saying we need drawings. And that's what I'm saying, 60 to 90 days. We don't need to delay. We need to move forward with some speed.
I think it's important. We have excellent telecommunicators. We have excellent first responders. It's our job to give them the tools and resources that they need to get their jobs done, to take care of the residents, and that's exactly what this is a tool and a resource for, truthfully, emergency services as a whole, and specifically for our telecommunicators or dispatchers. So, any other question or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. And that is unanimous.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We can't wait for the update there, Mr. Brook.
Absolutely.
Next item on tonight's agenda is executive session, contractual legal. receipt of legal advice regarding Pickens County Library System. I'll ask for a motion and a second that we go into executive session for this long item tonight.
Motion?
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.